tired of ads crashing your comedy podcast party? Good news. Ad-free listening on Amazon Music is included with your Prime membership. Just head to amazon.com/ad-free comedy to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads. Enjoy thousands of Acast shows ad-free for Prime subscribers. Some shows may have ads.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our quick publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Podcasting to you from my field here in beautiful rural Ireland. I'm Trev Downey, and this is the latest episode of the transfer show here on Anfield Index Pro, for which, of course, I am joined by my own mucker, Dave Davis, the man in the know. How are you, my friend?
Yeah, good. Looking forward to this one. Just probably wished a bit more was happening, Trev. Put it that way.
I don't know what you're talking about, lad. We've got loads to talk about. Let's not sicken them too early. But, you know, it is interesting. There are a lot of summer stories, but maybe not a lot of immediate window stories, which I think is fair enough. We kind of all knew that. But, yeah, we have a few downers today. So let's start with the kind of local stories, the LFC related ones that we do know and there are rumors about, and maybe we'll just finish off then with some of those summer rumors because, you know, people might want to get carried away and think something could happen short term if and when. So we'll start off with what we knew was going to happen. Something was going to have to happen for our friend Fabio Carvalho, who was back in the fold briefly with the aim of heading out again. That has been sorted since we last spoke. We were also wondering what might happen with Nat Phillips. We didn't mention last time out Billy Koumetio, and there were others involved in the coming back to be recycled, like our friend and centre half Nat Phillips' pal. So there are a few other Reds who are in the mix here who need to be sorted out over this break. It seems, though, that Carvalho is the only one that's got any certain news about him.
Yeah, it's the kind of the kids are leaving the crash, as it were, so to speak, aren't they? So Carvalho, we know he's gone to Hull with a bit of a dig from the Red Bull sporting director. That was interesting. They did an interview, didn't they, in Germany, and he was very much saying that we wanted him, we liked him. He just, when he had to fight for his place, he didn't want it, type of thing. So again, just levels a few question marks against mentality, doesn't it, Trev? Others, like you say, Reece Williams, we're waiting for news on him, but it's fully expected he's going out on loan, setting something up more permanent for himself at the same time. Nat, like you said, we're going to have to wait right till the end of the window and check everyone's back from injuries before we let Nat out the cage. We obviously keep him in, so to speak. Billy Koumetio. I mean, how many clubs has this kid had? And now he's struggling at Dunkirk. I didn't even know Dunkirk had a football club, Trev. I thought it was just a World War II site type of thing. But he can't even make it there, so he's on his way back. Calvin Ramsey even confirmed today that Liverpool will cut that short with Preston. So again, full expectation of a revolving door as well, that he will just come straight back in and straight back out. I think the only interesting thing was, sort of as we do when we harangue and sort of speak to journalists about this, it's easy just to portray it as all the loans have been a disaster, etc., etc. The club apparently almost expected that not every loan works. They also reference things like Tyler Morton doing well at Hull, Sepp van der Berg doing well at Mainz and that type of thing. And the expectation is that the club are quite honest. Not every player is going to make it as a Liverpool player because the standard is so high, which isn't a bad thing in its sense anyway. Doesn't mean a lot won't have actual professional careers, Trev, does it? It just might not be at our level, so to speak, in that regard. But the club are kind of, they're not seeing it as the big negative that maybe a lot of the fans are, in the sense of As long as if you get the experience like a Bradley, like a Kwanzaa, and just make the next step, that's what they're kind of after. So it's interesting that way, but yeah, the loan cycle is in full swing.
It is, and I'm not 100% sure what age Billy Koumetio is, but he was the one who had all the buzz about him back in the day. If you recall, he was with the first team squad in the summer tours and stuff like that. It's quite the falling off. Hopefully he'll be able to do something to get the right move to rehabilitate that career of his. But like, as you say, the Carvalho to Hull thing seems to be the one that's certain. And you know, I think it may well require yourself and myself getting on a quick Ryanair flight from wherever you are and I am to get over and have a word to release free Nat Phillips. We'll get some free Nat Phillips t-shirts made up, I think, for the sake of the podcast, because the poor bastard needs releasing. It's just mean. Now, my other story that I wanted to go to before we get to the real, God, please don't let this happen story. More happened in terms of clarity around Max Eberl. Now, I'm going to need you to explain to me what's happening here, because apparently it was between us and Bayern, and apparently the decision has been made, and apparently the Germans have won. Fine. So what does Christoph Freund do? I understand I'm very ignorant about all of this stuff, but how does that work? Is Eberl just entirely recruitment now then? Because Christoph Freund's sporting director there, no? And he was one of the ones that we were thinking, wow, what a great get that was for them. So how does that actually break down? So talk to me about that, about the confirmation around that. Where does that story come from? Should we believe it? Are those reports reliable about Eberl?
Yeah, I think unfortunately we'd love to believe it was just nonsense, but they're probably as reliable as they come, to be honest. All the major German outlets have gone with it. Guy Germany, so Patrick Berger was on there, Plettenberg, even Volk, all the names have said it. That it's pretty much done, that Max Eberl, and it'll be from March time, Trev, will join the Bayern board. It's all been ratified. Compensation with Red Bull's not going to be an issue, around €5 million, everything's sorted. Yeah, it's just almost a whole different structure in Germany, to a point, I should say. I mean, the first thing about sporting directors in Germany is they face the press, don't they? They do interviews, they do stories, they play games a lot of the time as well, shall we say? Whereas if you think, no one heard a peep, did they, from Edwards, Ward? That's not the nature of a sporting director in the UK, shall we say? So it's a different element there. The other thing is Bayern. They're just such a unique club, aren't they, in sense of the board, the head of the board, the president, the chairman. I mean, a lot of the press describes the Bayern whole situation as a nest of vipers, essentially. We know what's happened to Oliver Kahn. We know what happened to Salihamidzic last season, all those types of things. So very much Freund will have that say, but the expectation is that Eberl will almost be the bridge between the board and Freund, the sporting director, to almost smooth it all over. That doesn't mean, though, to be honest, that he's not sharpening his knife, ready to get Freund in the back, so to speak. That is how Bayern seem to operate, in all honesty, isn't it? It's just the expectation, kill or be killed type of thing. So it will be interesting to see how that plays out long term. But the bad news for us, and I think most Reds, Trev, I think the number one we all wanted, I think that's off the list, I'm afraid.
Yeah, just more example of Bayern Munich stacking resources. Because the idea was that he would probably become that kind of director of football, sporting director figure at Liverpool. And like I say, they've already got one of those, a highly rated one. So it's remarkable. As you say, just a guy they can afford to get in to be some sort of an interim stage. Wow, it's you realize you're sort of on a different playing field sometimes. And speaking of different playing fields, some of our ex-Reds went off and took the Saudi dollar, and it turns out I think the grass wasn't always as green over there, and they probably started to get the hump playing in front of 13 men and a goat. And I mean, seriously, crowds of 700 for the likes of Jordan Henderson. But Jordan's not the one that is focus at the moment. There are some distressing reports about a return to the Premier League for Bobby Firmino, heaven forfend. And we saw Bobby in the crowd at Anfield recently himself, and old Flacco there having the crack on a cold winter's evening in Anfield. The feelings of goodwill. I was there for Bobby's last game. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. The affection, for an outpouring of affection for a player, I think is the most I've ever seen in any time I've been there. It was remarkable. A kind of a joyous celebration, and the sadness didn't really kick in at all until the very end when we were sort of watching him being upset. Now, the thoughts of Bobby turning out for another Premier League team is hard to get your head around. How real are these stories, Dave?
I almost feel dirty saying these, Trev. You almost feel like you need a shower after this podcast, just even saying this. However, we've got to treat them with credence for a couple of reasons. I mean, it kind of started with a few mentioning it, that Chelsea are looking for a short-term option. So Benzema and Bobby are the two that are sort of being floated. And you thought, are they just pulling names? But I think you've got to give them credence, unfortunately, because Matt Law from the Daily Telegraph, he was the Chelsea and Villa correspondent and does get a lot of good stories. There's no two ways about it. Unfortunately, has said that Chelsea have specifically inquired around Firmino. It doesn't obviously mean it's happening. There's still going to be a lot of steps if it is to happen, and Bobby could turn it down, which we all hope, and he comes out with a statement saying that type of thing. But no one's dismissed it yet. Is the just slight worry, is it, shall we say? So hopefully we kind of come back next week and it's been all like, forget it, not happening. And that would make us all happy in that regard, because we don't really want to contemplate, if this came to fruition, what it actually means for us. Let's be honest, it's vile.
It is. It's distressing on a level that I don't even want to entertain. Like you said, though, I mean, again, occasionally it's important for us to take a breath. I don't know if you were sort of on the platform in the immediate aftermath of Manchester City's win the other evening, a late win over who'd they beat again? Newcastle. And of course, you would expect there'd be a few comments along the lines of, oh, these bastards are back or whatever. But I've never seen such defeatism in my life. It was remarkable. It was just all, oh, that's it, game over. Never mind the fact that we have a lead and that they were expected to beat Newcastle. Just the pessimism was absolutely off the charts. And it makes you, I get it. Realism's one thing, but this dark pessimism for no reason in the face of a team who's already overachieved, why couldn't they keep doing it? Who knows what's possible for the rest of this season. But it's strange to see. Now, we have to remind ourselves, Dave, don't we, that we are up against the likes of Man City, and that's probably fueling that dark attitude from a lot of our fans. But look at Chelsea. All they've got to do is just pick the name Benzema out of a frickin' hat, and apparently it's a reality. This is grim, but it does sort of tie in with something that we're going to come back to, no doubt, again and again over the rest of the course of our shows in this break, which is the Saudi thing. And this isn't something you specifically mentioned here. And he's a guy who's now gone on to split opinions spectacularly and mostly head towards the negative. But Jordan Henderson is possibly now, alongside Firmino and perhaps Benzema, a kind of a new story. Guys who are disgruntled there, who are not enjoying their football there, who are looking to get back to European football in any way, shape or form. We saw the stories linking Henderson to Ajax, and apparently they're quite real. I believe there was comment from someone at Ajax. My question for you is, have you heard any more of these wantaways? And what does that do to the project that we were all told about, that's building, that only on the last show you mentioned the ungodly sum that has been earmarked for it. We are apparently on a hiatus over this window, but don't worry, it's coming back and there's going to be all this money. But in the meantime, your star players are drifting away, theoretically. What's going on here, do you think?
I think it's kind of a key moment for the Saudis in this regard, isn't it? I mean, with Henderson, every journalist kind of has it. It's well known he wants to leave. All his team have put that out there, so they were inviting offers, and obviously Juventus had an inquiry, but realised it wasn't really going to work out for what they were thinking. Ajax are very much trying, Trev. The problem is Ajax's finance against what they want to offer, what Henderson wants, and all that type of thing. There's a huge gap, but the Ajax offer is very, very real. And I think that it might have been their manager was talking about it, how they're trying to make that work. But in terms of amount, length of contract, fee, well, obviously they don't want to pay a fee. And Al-Ettifaq, this is the key thing, is saying, well, if you want to get our main man, considering what we've just paid for him, it's going to take a whacking great, portion, if not all of that 20 million or so back in that regard. So,
are you that person who has everything? The coolest merch and those must-have fan threads? Well, over at our Anfield Index shop, we've gone that extra mile when it comes to pimping up your Liverpool collection. From our popular range of bespoke design t-shirts, sweaters, hoodies and hats, to our signature edition mugs, prints and coasters, all provided with fast worldwide shipping. We have something for every red. We also stock official LFC merchandise and are licensed with the Premier League and UEFA to sell official iron-on shirt badges and sleeve patches. As a listener to this podcast, you can get 10% off everything with coupon code AIPRO10. Just head over to AnfieldIndex.shop or find us on Etsy by searching for Anfield Index.
Tired of ads barging into your favorite news podcasts? Good news. Ad-free listening on Amazon Music is included with your Prime membership. Just head to amazon.com/ad-free news podcasts to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads. Enjoy thousands of Acast shows ad-free for Prime subscribers. Some shows may have ads.
I just get the feeling that, Benzema even, it's important to mention. He's been absent. He's not yet returned to Al-Ittihad's warm weather training camp in Dubai. He's supposed to be back already, but he's not. So that's being obviously watched at the same time as well. I struggle to feel sympathy for any of these players because they knew what they were taking, Trev. You got to pretend you weren't going to anything but the money. Let's not mince words in that regard. And, it may sound heartless, but even for a person that's been Liverpool captain and done so well, it does have the feeling for me, personally, what did you expect? You've made your bed, lie in it type of job. As cruel as that may sound, I'm struggling to see it any other way.
Oh, yeah. I think there's zero feelings of pity in any way, shape or form. That would be entirely misplaced. But it just is interesting, the comment that it is making on the state of that project, where it's at, how real is it going to be as a threat going forward? How does it grow from here if it can't hold on to players for such a brief period when they're being so handsomely rewarded? Like you say, they must have walked in with their eyes open. They must have had some concept of the fact that they would be playing in front of small crowds and all the rest of it, and then it was a growing thing. But whatever's happening there, it doesn't seem to be very positive. We can only then talk about, in terms of the Reds, and we should just for a second, because whether people are doing this just to upset me personally, because, of course, that's how the world works, Dave, or whether it's just because there is literally nothing going to happen in this window, so people are grabbing at all that they can. On Anfield Index at the moment, there's a story about a potential 98 million deal for a midfielder split over 3 tranches of 32 million, which doesn't add up to 98. But anyway, let's not quibble with that. And, there are also stories about us being linked with really highly rated young defenders, at least 2 of whom are very high profile and, incredibly highly rated, apparently with massive buyout clauses as well. why don't you flag up for people a few of these stories? Because let's be honest, the minute this window shuts disappointingly, all that will be talked about and all you and I will be thinking about in regards to this show is what we actually going to do when we do spend some money. And I think there might be some real heft to some of these stories and rumours. They make sense because they're players in positions that we would look at, and they're also of the right age profile. So talk us through some of the summer stories that you're hearing.
Yeah, so the big ones, I think, I know you mean Bruno Guimaraes, the Newcastle Brazilian international, who, funnily enough, was in France today. So that sent rumours wagging before everyone realised he was just having a break with his mates and his family and everything like that. But as the transfer window does, the thing about Bruno Guimaraes, and this came up with David Lynch on Media Masters today. Liverpool have liked this player for a long, long time. They've watched him closely before he went to Newcastle. And as David Lynch mentioned, there probably is the big talk in Anfield that they regret not pulling the trigger when he was at Lyon type of thing. They've realised it was, a bit of a mistake if you look onto how he's, he has become one of the top midfielders, I think it's fair to say, in the Premier League. So they've missed a trick there. Naturally, Newcastle's issues around their accounts and their PSR calculations, etc., are now well known. So people will say, one of their stars has got to go. That's naturally the same for a lot of clubs who are struggling that way. The only issue is, and I think this was a fair point that was made with Bruno, is he's 26 now, Trev. Mm. That's the issue. We know the FSG sweet spot somewhere between that sort of 22 to 24. And 24 tends to be the top end in the nicest way, bar the odd exception. Like Jurgen Klopp can force an endo through now and again, but he doesn't get too many, even Jurgen Klopp, let's pretend. So 26 now, it doesn't really translate to a 100 or just shy of £100 million signing for Liverpool. So I think a lot of journalists are saying it's an easy link because Liverpool are being linked with Sixers, but probably not for that one. However, Liverpool, as a lot of journos, when you ask them, you're harassing around, very much looking at centre-halves for the future. Everyone knows Joel Matip's situation and the situation Liverpool have got there. So there is a lot of expectation that a centre-half will come into Anfield during the summer. Now, the big one's being linked, and this is understandable. Leny Yoro, the Lille international, absolute beast in the air. Better numbers than Van Dijk in the air, a real talent. Not quite as progressive, raw to be expected for that age as well, but he's not got long left on his contract, but there's a lot of interest in this kid, Trev. The full expectation is he moves on in the summer. The problem is Liverpool like this player, but so do a lot of Europe's other big names, which FSG, us, we don't like bidding wars, do we? That's not the type of players we go for. So that counts against it as well. However, if there's a chance at a decent price, I think we'd be all over it. But those two things correlated, a lot of journalists are struggling to see it. And then people know about Ignacio. We've watched him, but there's been question marks. Why haven't we gone for it? The release clause. The big one that's also coming up a lot is Diomande, isn't it? His centre-half colleague at Sporting. Very much Liverpool have had scouts there watching Ignacio and Diomande as suggestions. So we do have a lot of interest in this player. Is he the one they'll go for? Hard to say, but as almost an all-round central defender whose price might be more attractive in terms of where we shop than Yoro, it wouldn't surprise me if he was the kind of one. And I'm not saying I know that for definite. I'm not saying the journos confirm that, but Liverpool have definitely been watching Diomande along with Ignacio, so one to keep an eye on through to the summer, definitely.
Yeah, I've heard Todibo as well, and odd stories going around today. And again, these can come from nothing more than one fella with a fanciful tweet, but there are stories also about how Elise is going to be on his bike away from his club, United, and Liverpool being linked with him as well. But, Elise, Guimaraes, what strikes me about those players is we've probably missed the window there in terms of their affordability, right? In terms of, we're always wanting to be that first step as opposed to having to go in and now buy at an inflated price. It just doesn't seem very FSG. So, look, we'll watch this space. I know young Hendrick is salivating at the idea of us getting Kamara, another guy who you imagine will be priced to the sky come summertime. So
the only thing I should say on those two, and this is where, and we trade in rumours and speculation. We live for this shit. Let's not lie, Trev. We love it type of thing. So with Elise and that new contract, no one knows for definite again, but there are suggestions there's a release clause in there. That's why a lot of clubs are intrigued. And same with Kamara. Again, speculation, nothing concrete, but there is a lot of speculation that there is a release clause in there if Villa don't get top 4 next season, and that keeps coming up as well. So it's probably one of those. I think you're right. However, if those release clauses are there and they do become active, could just be a nice little shift in the picture for us, eh?
Well, you know what we do there, don't you? Get George on the job. Get it, Schmat kid, because that's his speciality, right? He loves a release clause. He loves to trigger a clause, this Big Jorg. So, yeah, that's interesting. That's very, very interesting. And slightly upbeat news for us to leave the Liverpool aspect of this on. However, as always, there's lots going on elsewhere. And Spurs are the first club we're going to come to, which is interesting because Spurs now, according to football messiah Gary Ratboy, are likely now to finish ahead of Liverpool. He was dropping his little bits of bait left, right and centre and getting all sorts of bites. But, you know, they had their draw at the weekend there against United. And old Ange mate is doing a very good job there. He seems to have a lot of buy-in and he seems to have a lot of good players, but they definitely need strengthening. So I'm assuming that there is going to be something to add to the Werner story, which I'm assuming is close to being done. What do we know about Tottenham incomings? And we saw, didn't we, the latest in a long line of English footballers and managers doing weird accents when they're being interviewed by the foreign press in their new place. And Eric Dier, not quite as spectacular as some of the ones we've seen. We all saw Joey Barton's one recently because everyone was having a good laugh at him. And we remember Steve McLaren doing his Dutch. But Dier was definitely trying something. I'm not sure what it was, but he was enunciating in a way that he wouldn't normally have. So we know he's out. Who's in? And is there any other stories of exits from Spurs?
Yeah, to be honest, Spurs seem like the only actually active Premier League team in this whole window at the moment. Like you say, Werner's now in. There is an option there to make it permanent. So if you like fast strikers that hit Rosie with, most shots, then we'll see if they want to do that deal. The Dier story, Trev. I love this. I don't know if you remember a couple of weeks ago, I said there's a Tottenham fan site that refers to him as Dum Dum.
Yes.
So that's what they call him. Dier. So as the headline, and I thought I'll have a look, see if they mention it. And as the headline went, which I love, Dum Dum has gone. So yeah, Eric Dier has joined, basically because Harry Kane needs a pal, doesn't he, type of thing. Yep. So he is now there. I mean, if people must be thinking, I need an agent like Eric Dier's. How can you be like Tottenham's 6th or 7th choice centre half and end up at Bayern Munich, playing potentially knockout Champions League football? Now, the big thing to say about this is that before anyone goes off Bayern Munich, they have taken a bit of a punt, and he is, I would say, Eric Dier is now Bayern Munich's Nat Phillips. He's covered for them, Trev. They've literally given him an initial 6-month deal, which is what he had left on his Tottenham. So let's not pretend they're putting him smack bang centre. He's more cover because Tuchel's kicked off and done all his things that he does, etc. So he's one in the door, but it's not like Bayern are celebrating. It's not like Tottenham are crying. This is just a one that you're all just kind of scratching our heads at a bit. So that's the thing to say. And they've completed that move now, haven't they, for Dragussin? So as soon as Dier's gone, that Dragussin deal's been done. So they've got the remaining centre-half in. So I think he came on for the last minute or so against United with his ridiculous top knot and big beard. He looks like if you ordered Khal Drogo off Wish.com type of thing. So we'll see how it plays out. But yeah, and then even more, Tottenham is still looking at, as quite a few journos have, and it's kind of well known whether they'll stump up the cash, whether they'll go there, whether they'll try and push a deal on Chelsea at the last minute. But Tottenham have definitely not abandoned their interest in Conor Gallagher, the Chelsea midfielder, Chelsea vice-captain, or often captain, isn't he, in that regard as well? So, yeah, amazingly, when all the other clubs are skint, worried about different things, Tottenham are interestingly the ones doing a little bit of business.
I wonder how much money Dier was on. Would he have been one of the wage earners, big wage earners? He's been there a long time. You'd imagine if he's got an agent worth a damn, he would have had his wages ratcheted pretty high up. So maybe that has funded a couple of these new moves. And, yeah, it's very interesting. I remember back in the day, this is probably before your time, buddy, but Gaza had his pal who I think was paid by the club at Newcastle to hang around with him and keep him. It's just, he just was paid to be Gaza's professional pal, and I called Jimmy Five Bellies.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it just has that feel to it, Kane's professional chum, just to train with him. And I don't know if you read the story there during the week. I think it was today or yesterday. There was quotes from Harry Kane about how he's adapting to learning German. And he says, it's going well. I mean, I'm doing 2 hours a week, and it's improving slowly. I'm like, what the hell? What sort of half-arsed effort is that? 2 hours a week when you're in a new country, and he's clearly got someone speaking English to him all the time. It's not an issue. I don't know. It's just these guys are on a different sort of. He was actually chuffed with it. Is kind of my point. Let's go to Chelsea, because you mentioned Conor Gallagher and how he is being touted around the place. Pochettino has gone on the record saying that he needed players in. He made a big point of saying that, and made a big point really of not quite doing the poor mouth, but making it clear that he and the owners needed to talk. Now, whatever comes of that at Chelsea is a different thing altogether. Maybe he went in and Bowley just stuck on his cowboy hat and just went full mental. Who knows what's going on there? It's an odd setup, but it does seem as if they've got quite a few on the way out. Some of them we've heard about, might have flagged them up on previous shows. What do we know about who's going away? And if anything, have we heard about any moves in towards Chelsea to make Pochettino a happier boy?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It does seem that Chelsea are very much almost, maybe in terms of the PSR whole thing, clearing the decks, so to speak, in terms of those who aren't getting games, those 26,000 players that are sitting on the bench or not making it each week type of thing. So Maatsen, he signed a new deal, the left back. He's now gone on loan with that small fee to Borussia Dortmund. And also part of that new contract was a new release clause in there. So they'll be hoping that they're looking to shift Maatsen on. He's got no future in Chelsea's eyes there. They just want to get the release clause. Fofana, I mean, they signed him, they loaned him out to Union Berlin. That didn't work. So then he came back and now he's been loaned out to Burnley. So it'll be interesting to see how he gets on there. We've mentioned Conor Gallagher. We mentioned Benzema there as well. We've mentioned Bobby. So there's those things. I mean, the other thing that in line with the PSR, and the saddest thing about Chelsea in a way, this window, Trev, is it seems like there's actually some calm, rationale and sense in there, which are not the things we look for at all for a window. It's what's let us down a bit. But actually someone in the Chelsea stable has said, let's just ice or renewal talk and everything like that till the end of the season. Instead of letting Todd give 39-year-old Thiago Silva a 12-year contract or something like that. Unfortunately, sense is prevailing in terms of let's see where we are in the summer. We might let Maurizio have a few temporary options, but we're not going for another striker now just because Nkunku might be out for a little bit of a period. So Pochettino's alluded to that as well. And even that Santos that they recalled from Nottingham Forest, it's fully expected he's set to turn around. So they're probably, for us, let's be honest, the biggest disappointment of the window, because sense, rationale, and finance are actually words that we've got to throw in with Chelsea, so to speak. So it's been disappointing, but...
Hello, I'm here to annoy you. I'm here to annoy you into listening to more of me and more of others on EPL Index. We don't just have the Anfield Index stuff. We've got EPL Index as well, which covers the entirety of the Premier League. And we have 3 podcasts and a whole bunch of really good writing on EPLindex.com. The podcasts are my own two-footed podcast, which is every day at 4 p.m, Monday through Friday, covering the whole league. We have A Tad Predictable, hosted by Tadiwa. You know Tadiwa, he does Anfield Index. He presents A Tad Predictable before every Premier League match week. And then Kevin DeVries and his crew on the EPL Roundtable, they're every week after the Premier League match week. So make sure you listen to everything we're doing on EPL Index and follow us there on Twitter at EPL Index. Thank you. Bye-bye.
That cruise line is maybe just starting to turn around a little bit. So the whole hope is that there's an absolute mutiny. Sweeney Todd gets back in control and does some summer madness. But I don't know if they've medicated him or what. It's all very sensible at Chelsea at the moment, annoyingly.
It is. It's way too flat. I don't know what they're thinking. We've got a show to fucking create here, Dave. It's very, very, very inconsiderate for Todd to suddenly not be gone full Bowley when we need him to be. Similarly, you could say something along the same lines about Manchester United. We'll get to that in a minute. But before we do, a team that everybody keeps waiting to throw their money in a very spectacular way at the wall is Newcastle. And in the same fashion that you said, atypically Chelsea seem to be currently operating, Newcastle have operated to a large extent in a much more sensible fashion than most of us thought was going to happen. I think most people thought it was going to be early days of Manchester City, spectacular, firing amounts of money around and maybe a lot of misfits and just sort of stumble your way to your first success by dint of the fact that you've so many good players on your books. But again, it seems to be an issue of finances here. It's very strange, this, isn't it, Dave? All of it is a bit strange. All the talk about poor old Everton today, apparently with a new penalty. Yeah. I don't know, did Forest equally pick up a penalty as well? There was talk about them. I'm literally just in the door, so I didn't hear the latest news. I think it broke in the last couple of hours. And there's all this talk about clubs having to be sustainable, and then all the time we've got this looming 115 charges over City, and nobody's talking about them at all. They've got a cigar on while everyone else is fretting. It's hard to stomach it, really. It all feels a little bit disingenuous. I said that to you during the week. All this talk and all this po-faced chat about having to be above board with finances and all that type of thing. To me, it always just jars, because we're supposed to just not go back into the past, and we can only look in this certain window. And too many people, to me, Dave, are accepting that. In fact, I've seen them come out on Twitter and other platforms and say, no, well, you don't understand. You don't understand. The City charges are from the past. I don't give a shit. The City charges are charges based on previous dealings. So why do we have to wait? And people are talking about how it's good. This could take years. And listen, fair enough. I understand how the ridiculous slow the wheels turn. I understand that. But the idea that they're somehow getting off the hook really sticks in my craw. And I just feel it all seems a little bit, you know what I mean, disingenuous, because people are still doing what they're doing. It does seem, though, that overall clubs are a bit more chastened. This window is oddly quiet. And Newcastle are quite indicative of that. We'd have thought, well, they've got infinity money, so one of these days it's going to go. But no, what do we know about what's happening there in terms of their dialed down type of deals that we're hearing about potentially, and their financial issues?
Yeah, I mean, Newcastle were the sort of the precursor almost, weren't they, to Forest and Everton? That was the big breaking news for last night and into today. The thing about Newcastle, which was interesting, they announced their losses, didn't they? And people were huge. And they tried to spin it. It's like, oh, but look, we've grown financial revenue in the deals. It's like, yeah, look how much money you've lost at the same time as well. And them's the rules, as it were, so to speak. So Eddie Howe has done his normal thing about, well, we're looking to buy, but even the way he put it with that whole, and no one's looking to help us, so we won't get any good loans. Well, that's not how it works, Eddie. And think about just tone deaf as normal, sort of Newcastle Eddie Howe style. But yeah, and then even today, Trev, on the back of what's happened, there's even been the stories that Newcastle will say it doesn't make financial sense to pursue Kalvin Phillips, so that's dead in the water. So that's, the thing that's happening, it is disingenuous, like you said. In simple terms, the PSR, this calculation of profit and sustainability, i.e., I think it's 105 million over a rolling 3-year period. Your losses can't be any more than that, or you face charges and penalties. Now, whatever you think of this as a Premier League football club fan or whatever, those are the rules, and they've been the rules for a long time. So the club's trying to pretend that it's everyone's against us and all this. Look how much money you've lost. You've breached the rules. So let's not play there's any innocent parties in this for a second. On the other side as well, Trev, let's not pretend that the Premier League are a vehicle for good and to end tyranny and things like that. The Premier League have got their arse in gear all of a sudden because politically there's all this pull for an independent regulator, isn't it? So the Premier League shit its pants and gone, oh no, actually we best look like we can actually solve things and do something in-house. Hence the heavy-handed approach with Everton. And by the way, I'm saying that it's heavy-handed. Well, whatever I think of it, Everton, are not innocent by any means with their losses, but it was heavy-handed. There was an element I think they were made an example of personally. However, again, this second time round, Everton are still arguing it, trying to do it. Forest have said they'll fully comply. We'll see how nice they are with the Premier League, shall we say, as this progresses. But the one thing those two clubs have done, or the way the Premier League's done it towards them, it's the knock-on effects to the others, isn't it? It's just made them pause and go, hold on. We don't want to be Forest or Everton. So we can't do anything now. We know where the line is. We know we have to submit our accounts and all this. We're working with the Premier League. So let's keep our powder dry for January. So we've got the money for the summer on that rolling basis. But bloody killed our January show a little bit, hasn't it? But yeah, political bastards, eh? Simple as that, as Blackadder would say.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to. That's what it comes down to. We do have some stories of some business getting done. We saw, for example, Sancho making good on his loan with Dortmund. I think on his first game back, he was responsible for an assist and looking very much at home again there, and saying as much as well. You'd imagine he's going to be angling for that to be a permanent thing. We've heard this ridiculous story during the week. You're talking there about fiscal responsibility. Well, I think probably the definition of fiscal irresponsibility, and of course, please don't tell Greta Thunberg either, is Mr. Danjuma with his flights to and from training. What a weirdo. As Dice said, well, I'll probably get a car myself. And as you said here, it's kind of sarcasm, but it almost seemed as if he was just a bit nonplussed. This is weird, because he went on to say, modern players and they need the rest. It's not how earthworm chewer and gravel voice himself would have gone about it, no doubt. But so we've got Danjuma, who's probably a little bit unhappy where he is, it would appear. We've got Sancho doing a few bits as well on his loan move and making good on that. I don't know a whole lot more, except I think there's a few more outs likely at United. And we did see, yet again, stories, and I'm not sure how close they are to completion in terms of the deal, of Brighton. Fucking Brighton, man. They just are so good at picking up what everyone has heard of Barco. Everybody has heard. Everybody knows this is a talent for the future. They're going to get him at X price. You can tell us the details in a minute. And in a year's time, we'll be wondering if we should buy him for 100 million. This is how it's going to go. This is how it always goes with Brighton. They're just absolutely wonderful at what they do. So take us on the roundup of the remaining Premier League business then.
Yeah, so it's all still crazy elsewhere. I mean, Danjuma, Dyche, Everton, everyone could see this was going to be a disaster. I mean, he pied him for Tottenham a couple of seasons ago, didn't he? He just drove straight past the training ground when they expected him and went and signed for Tottenham. But they took him on loan for Villarreal because Everton was skiing and desperate. And funnily enough, it hasn't worked out particularly, has he? Now, Dyche, he tried to reel it back in this press conference. Like you said, Trev, there was the element of sarcasm along the flights from Manchester and like this. But I didn't hear him talking about Seamus Coleman travelling in his smart car. And I didn't hear him talking about Jordan Pickford in his Rolls Royce or anything like that. He very much singled one person out in that regard, talking about it when he could have dismissed it. I mean, it's quite clear that Danjuma doesn't like Everton. Dyche doesn't like Danjuma. I'm not even sure really Dyche particularly likes Everton. It's just a situation he finds himself in, so to speak. So I would not be surprised if that one does get terminated. But at the same time, it may just be a marriage of convenience because Everton can't afford to bring anyone in, can they? So they can keep all the players. That he's got to factor that in to some degree. But it meant that press conference. Unai Emery as well. I mean, he did a big press conference, didn't he? And he was alluding to these rules and all this, and he kept saying these rules and these rules. But he said like a few players can leave, like Traore and Chambers can go, but Duran will not be allowed to leave on loan because we need bodies, but not Chambers and Traore, apparently. So, yeah, he's mentioned it that way at the same time as well. I mean, United, annoyingly, it looks like they might be getting a bit sensible now as well because they're clearing the decks, aren't they? Hannibal's now gone. So he joined Sancho, like you say, Van der Beek and Hannibal to Sevilla with an option of, I think it's 20 million euros to make that permanent. And there might well be a few others go. Pellistri's been linked with a move, and very much all the suggestions are almost when we said that they weren't going to offer them, and then Ten Hag said we are going to try and offer Martial and Varane something. Guess what's not happened, funnily enough, Trev? So United are being very sensible, annoyingly, in terms of they are trying to clear that wage bill, get the decks ready for summer and the massive overhaul again that's going to be needed. The only thing that did make me laugh is United very much briefed the UK journos around Sancho. And if you saw it, the headline they kept coming out with was, oh, this is good, and it's going to save or it's going to gain United like £4 to £5 million over that period. Well, yeah. Well, that's because Dortmund are paying about 100 grand a week of his 300 grand a week roughly wages, Trev. Do you know what I mean? They're still paying about 200 grand a week for him not to play for them. So it was very nicely spun in terms of accounts. And it is true, it will help the bottom line, but let's not pretend anything's successful there in that regard. But annoyingly, United are just being sensible, as we said there. Then a couple of other clubs, Forest, I mean, we know what the shtick they're in now. So Mangala's been linked with a lot of places. I fully expect that one to happen, even if it's temporary, their midfielder to step out. Napoli, they look like they're going to be buying Traore from Bournemouth for around a loan with a 25 million option. You're seeing though, aren't you, because of these finances, a lot of loan options, aren't they, Trev? There's very few that are going through full price at this stage as well. And then, like you said, Brighton, around £8 million are completing that deal. If the Telegraph said they've done it, but no one's officially reported it, and Brighton haven't said we've officially done it yet, but everyone's just waiting for the announcement. Valentin Barco there. Left-sided player, because he has played wing-back, left-back and left wing for Boca. There's a bit of uncertainty. And interestingly, in that report, there's even a suggestion that Brighton are buying with the unusual thing of actually looking to loan him out. So they won't be bringing him over to the Prem straight away. So a little bit different, although they've done it with McAllister before as well. They did a loan to another Argentinian club, so they know how things work. Like I can question Brighton over South American deals, for God's sake, even for a second. But yeah, it's just this whole PSR thing has just made things quiet. The only hope, and I'm clinging on to this in the Premier League, there is a few journos who are saying the stronger ones are waiting to pick off the weak. You know, these ones who have got the real financial problems and get to the end of the window, who've almost got to flog their wares, so to speak, because they need to get people off the bill or things like that. There is just a suspicion that a few of the big ones are just waiting to see, can we do a sweet deal at the end type of thing, as in, even if he's not our first choice, we can't pass that player up at that type of value, if that makes sense. So there might be a few deadline late moves, but as it stands, it's loans and quiet.
It is the most tumbleweed of windows that I can ever recall, in terms of, there's not just, usually there might be just one massive move that's being done that, you know, is being sanctioned by some club, and a couple of other sort of large size moves. There's nothing. And across Europe, we're hearing nothing really much either. There's the ongoing nonsense with Le Petit Shite. But that's just silly talk, and it's a one-off. It's weird. It's weird. If you didn't know better, you'd say that perhaps football clubs are in the know about, impending financial difficulties. I've got a white woolly hat, not my tinfoil hat on today, so we'll leave it at that. But yeah, I loved the spin of United making €5 million on the deal to loan out Sancho, and not in any way mentioning that they're paying 10 million to allow Dortmund to qualify for the Champions League via a player that they are not playing and are paying to play for Dortmund. Yeah, that's a hard sell. I can't say I'm buying that one. We mentioned Bayern earlier on. We talked about Dier and all the rest of it, and we know what they're doing in terms of their shake-up in their management structure and ownership structure. As you said, Night of the Long Knives is an ongoing thing there. But in terms of players in, normally you can rely on Bayern. That they're going to do something. But I'm not hearing a whole lot here. I think I've heard one player being linked with them. You'll know more than I do, but it just seems really, really quiet. And even people who were previously linked with them, like young Palhinha there, or not so young Palhinha, which is the issue for us, I think. I think that just seems to be stone dead. What's Tommy Tuchel up to?
Yeah, I think he kind of alluded to he wanted players, and the Bayern board and Freund, they wanted a few players, and it was defensive positions, wasn't it? So Eric Dyer's now one in, that's one in the door. The other one that is expected still to go through is Mukiele, the former Red Bull player now at PSG, i.e. a player that can play right back and in the centre of defence. And funnily enough, that's what Christoph Freud said. They were looking for a player who can do both. So, you can draw that. They were also linked with, I think Sacha Boey is pronounced, Galatasaray, the Dutch right back. But it is fully expected that the Mukiele deal gets done in that regard. And to be honest, he kind of killed it, because as much as Tuchel said, and Freud have both said we want a right back, they have both publicly on record said Palhinha, no go. Which you kind of feel for him, because, he did all the kits, didn't he? They just couldn't get the deal done in time. And now they've kind of left him hanging all window, haven't they, in that regard? But both Freund and Tuchel have come out, which is weird, isn't it? Because good old Tommy was saying the whole summer, we're short in the six. I've got no sixes, nothing at all. To now go, yeah, we're pretty covered there, despite no real midfielder coming in and Ryan Gravenberch going out. But hey-ho, what's happened behind the scenes at Bayern, as you know, is anyone's guess. Freud's the same, so expectation, Mukiele probably is the one that gets done, but that'll be it for Bayern.
Yeah, there's something afoot when even Thomas Tuchel isn't complaining. He's one of those world-class moaners, and if he's not having a moan, or if he's, as you say, changed his tune on something which he'd previously been moaning about, I don't know, there's something weird going on here. We've got basically one other story about a move that may not happen, and then we're going to move on to the Saudi chat again, just to reiterate some of the stuff we mentioned earlier and talk about perhaps a few other potential deals, already knowing before we go to that story that they're going to be quiet too. But the last story that we have around Europe is about Mr. Girassi, who was linked with quite a few, but there seems to be an issue, Dave.
Yeah, I think in essence, a lot of factors have worked against him for the big move he probably hoped to get, which everyone expected at the same time as well. But PSR's played a part, so the fact that clubs are essentially skin or watching their spending in that regard's not helped him, because, I mean, we talked about this guy, didn't we, Trev? Stuttgart tearing it up, getting goals galore in the Bundesliga, and a release clause of about €17.5 million, i.e. around the £50 million mark, which is not pittance to the everyday man, but in football terms for a striker, it's bloody low, let's be honest, in that regard. But club finance has counted against him. He's also picked up a knock at AFCON, which is bad timing, really, isn't it, of all the times he didn't want to be injured, so that's coming into the mix as well. And then the other thing that kind of Bill released sort of earlier in the week, this release clause doesn't run for the whole of January, apparently. It only runs to sort of mid to late. Now, I haven't got a date on that. I've not got like a clock going down with my yellow tie on and a stupid accent or anything like that. But the time is ticking on that. So all these factors, unfortunately...
I don't need a VPN. I've got nothing to hide. This is what I used to tell myself before I hooked up with LibertyShield.com. Not only is my home internet now fully encrypted, but I can now access all the websites I want, whenever I want, and do so from absolutely anywhere. As a Liverpool fan, I love to know I can now watch every match, regardless of whether it's on UK TV or not. My Liberty Shield VPN makes sure nothing is blocked and guarantees me super fast streaming speed throughout that match. You can get connected right now with their software package, which includes a 48-hour no-obligation free trial and instant access to their apps for Apple, Android, Fire TV, PC, Mac, and Android TV. Or go a step further like I have and get one of their pre-configured VPN routers. These small but powerful devices allow you to easily connect every device in your home to VPN, making it the perfect solution for smart TVs, Mac boxes, and games consoles. Visit LibertyShield.com today and use coupon code AIVPN25 to get 25% off at checkout.
They've just sort of conspired against Mr. Girassi, haven't they, in this regard? But Stuttgart will be absolutely delighted, because they'll still get takers in the summer when, you know, people's pockets are aligned again, so to speak, and they won't have to let it go for €17.5 million, will they? It'll be a fair bit more in that regard. But unfortunately for this guy, hoping for that big move, the fates have conspired against him, I'm afraid.
It would seem that way. And before we move to our last story, which is the Saudi will they, won't they, what is actually going to happen, if anything, in this window, I've just seen a story come in here. I think it's come via Gazzetta dello Sport, so, you know, pinch of salt and all that. But just for the sake of a little bit of titillation before we finish, apparently, according to this source, George Smatka has convinced the board and Jurgen Klopp to make a large cash bid for Juventus's 18-year-old Kenan Yildiz, who's a very highly rated youngster. I don't know what you make of that, or if you've even heard of that name before, or whether the story has any. Let's be honest, it doesn't have any back into it at all, does it? Or you've mentioned it already.
Yeah, the kid's talented. Liverpool will be well aware of him. As well. Being honest, Trev, at Juventus, as will all the other top clubs in Europe. This is a talented kid, no doubts about it. Liverpool will have watched him. They'll be aware of him, as they are with all the other young talents. Is there anything I've heard that's imminent interest? No. It's also one of those. It feels like one of those Corriere dello Sport articles, doesn't it, type of thing as well. So, yeah, I'm not really putting any stock in that, got to be honest.
I think that's fair. Just to finish up then, in terms of what might happen with the Saudi dollar, we know that they're going to be a little bit more circumspect than even previously hinted at in terms of throwing the money around. There seems to be a sort of an artificial pause there with a view to picking it back up in the summer. At least that's what we're being told. But what with the stories of player exodus and all the rest of it, you can't help but wonder if the grand project might be on rocky ground. However, some people will still be getting a few shekels in their bank account on the back of the existence of that league. We know there's definitely some dealings to be done with Marseille, and we should also talk a little bit about what it would mean if they are going to let the likes of Henderson go. Because let's be honest, they're not going to do it because they need the money. So what possible benefit could there be there? And like you said earlier on, if someone is going to take that player or those players who are being linked with moves away because they're disgruntled, like Bobby, like perhaps Benzema, it's going to take a big wedge of cash, you would imagine, to force those clubs to, relinquish their stars. So it all seems a bit odd. What do we know in terms of any realistic moves at all? And then what's your final take, just to finish the show, in terms of what you think is going on there and the likelihood of any of those players ever being released anyway?
It is fascinating, the whole Saudi situation. I mean, they are still active to an extent, and I know people are going, hold on, you told us last week, that they paused, they spent the budgets. There is an element of that. The key things for the two deals at the moment of Renan Lodi, the Brazilian fullback who was on loan at Forest from Atletico Madrid and ended up at Marseille eventually. So he's set to go to a Saudi club. Now, the deal with that, Trev, is that they won't pay a fee now. They will bump up his wages, I'm sure you appreciate, a fair bit. And there will be a mandatory €20 million clause, which comes in the summer. Which is almost like they treat him like a DFS sofa type of thing. Paying up until summer. He's one of them type of deals, and he'll probably come with like a scratch protector or something like that. So that's one in the door for them. And then the other one is a similar Correa, who can't get really any minutes at Atletico Madrid at all. He's well out of favour there, the Argentinian. So he's fully expected to go there as well. So again, a nice wage bump. Again, it's full expectation that it'll be a loan with a mandatory option in the summer. But again, Atletico are in need of money, aren't they? Because they just keep paying Diego more and more and more. So they've got to cover that bill somehow. So it's interesting the way that they're still doing these deals, aren't they, Saudi, despite being off the grid for this. I mean, the interesting thing of this is, it's quite clear a lot of players are not enjoying it, aren't they? Like Bobby, Hendo, Benzema. It's no secret that they're not really enjoying it. In that regard, though, for the Saudis, and from when you ask around what the bits you can get, because I'm not going to pretend there's many Saudi football experts you can reach out to, don't get me wrong, but when you do, the implication is, no, Saudi have got no interest in losing face in this. This is a long-term project for them. So if the likes of Benzema, Hendo, whoever think it's going to be easy just to waltz off into the sunset and, thanks for everything like that, that is not going to happen. They're going to say you need to honour your contract. You are being paid handsomely. We build things around you, all these types of things as well. So that is the expectation. The other side to it is, this is just a temporary pause in January. Come the summer again, there is the expectation that, and again, we'll have to see because you never know, do you? But the expectation is that the Saudis will gear up again, so to speak. The issue that's going to be fascinating to see, and this is almost looking ahead to our summer shows as well, is it doesn't now look attractive as it did at the start of the summer window, does it, the Saudis? Because there's now something to base it on. Before, players were looking and going, I have no idea what this actually looks like, but £500,000 a week, how can I turn that down type of thing? Now, the money's going to be there, Trev, no doubt. But at the same time, there's something quantifiable where you can say, okay, I'm going to be playing in front of the dog and duck each week, yeah? And sometimes the duck might not be allowed out type of thing as well. So, it's very limited. There's no competition properly. The World Club Cups, all those types of things as well. So they know that. So there's no way of getting away from anything apart from you are going for the money big time, knowing you're going to be playing in front of no audience, basically, no competition and all that. So that will, I think, play a part for people that There's not going to be the exodus possibly of people. And this is me speculating. I don't know, because you say this, Trev, but how often does money talk in football? And also, the other thing that I'm just thinking comes into the summer, clubs are skint now, aren't they, Trev? Come the summer, they could be saying, it'd really help us out if you just went over there. I mean, Eddie Howe even said it in his press conference the other day. We didn't want to, but we had to sell Sam Maximan to help make the money back for PSR. I'm not really convinced. It just seems, the fact that he went to a Saudi club and who owns Newcastle seems very fortuitous without, wanting to be ultra cynical. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's a few try to nudge players that way, because who will give them top dollar type of thing. So it's been almost non-existent for us in January, but come summer, I don't know the level of the paradigm, but it's going to ramp up again. I've got no doubts about that.
Yeah, I mean, that seems to be our lot, doesn't it? In terms of this window, we're going to have a lot of stories like the Euro links and the Todibo links and the weird potential tripartite Guimaraes deal. These are the things that we're going to have to lean into, because, as you say, the reality is that nothing seems to be getting done now of much note. Things are being moved around, but it feels a little bit, and I hope I'm very wrong, but it feels a little bit like deck chairs on the Titanic at this stage. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope it's like you say, that there is this, natural pause because of a combo of PSR here and the grand plan over in Saudi. Let's see how that pans out. But I think we're pretty much there, Dave. I don't see a whole lot else that we haven't picked up on in terms of your notes and the little extra things I wanted to throw at you in terms of Googlies. Any last thoughts on any particular deal or any aspect of this that you want to just finish off with?
Hopefully, the deadly combination of fear, desperation, and money line up in the perfect equation, and we have some end to this window. That would be our biggest hope, that just people lose a few games and the panic starts. But I think it could just be maybe the strong prey upon the weak financially, so to speak. But God, it'd be nice if something happened, wouldn't it, Trev? Put it that way.
It would be nice if something happened, because if it doesn't, we're just going to have to change this to the no transfer show for a couple of weeks, which I'll be quite happy to do, because I enjoy talking about how things aren't happening just as much as they are. But for us, for another week, we're going to wrap it up there. Thanks to Dave Davis. I've been Trev Downey. This is the transfer show, or the no transfer show, on Anfield Index Pro, and we'll be back with you next week.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at AnfieldIndex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index, and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Tired of ads interrupting your gripping investigations? Good news. Ad-free listening on Amazon Music is included with your Prime membership. Ads shouldn't be the scariest thing about true crime. Just head to amazon.com/ad-free true crime to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads. Enjoy thousands of Acast shows ad-free for Prime subscribers. Some shows may have ads.